Welcome to Calculus Conqueror, Introduction to Limits, Part 3, Solving Limits by Conjugation. Let f of x equals the square root of x minus 1 divided by x minus 1. That is the function that we're given. What is the limit of the square root of x minus 1 divided by x minus 1 as x approaches 1? Well, the first thing we do is plug in 1 for x and see what we get. And we get the square root of 1 minus 1 divided by 1 minus 1, and that obviously is 0 divided by 0, which is a whole. So we have to start over and do some type of algebraic manipulation here, and what we do is what is called multiplying by the conjugate. And the conjugate of the square root of x minus 1 is the square root of x plus 1. And we put the conjugate over itself, so both in the numerator and denominator, and all we're really doing is multiplying our function by a fancy form of 1. Well, this is a great fancy form of 1 because we have the square root of x minus 1 times the square root of x plus 1. That's really the old-fashioned algebra form of a minus b times a plus b. And that is a squared minus b squared. In this case, the square root of x squared is simply x, and the square root, and the number 1 squared is 1. So now we have the limit of x minus 1 on top, and on the bottom we have x minus 1 times the square root of x plus 1. And this is all as x is approaching 1. In these type of problems, when you're doing the conjugate, you distribute out the part where it simplifies. So that's square root of x minus 1 times the square root of x plus 1. That simplifies just to x minus 1. In the denominator, however, we don't want to distribute that out because that will just become a mess, and it's very simple just to leave it in its factored form. And the reason why we want to leave it in its factored form is that you can see that the x minus 1 on top and the x minus 1 on bottom, so the x minus 1 in both the numerator and denominator, they cancel each other out. We wouldn't have been able to see that very clearly if we would have distributed the denominator. So we leave the denominator in its factored form, and we cancel out the x minus 1. And that is simply the limit of 1 over the square root of x plus 1 as x approaches 1. Now we can put in 1 for x, and we have 1 over the square root of 1 plus 1, which is equal to a half. So therefore, the limit of the square root of x minus 1 divided by x minus 1 as x approaches 1 is 1/2. Thank you very much, and have a great day.